This is where we left off at the end of part 6, where we finished the topology on the ghost. Since then I have made a few changes, pretty minor. I cleaned up the topology that was inside the mouth. I got rid of one triangle I had here under the arm. I thought it would probably cause a smoothing error, and I pretty much just kind of moved things around to the back a little bit. I also got rid of a triangle that I had sitting up in here and a whole edge loop that we didn't need. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. So let's go ahead and start cutting this up and getting it ready to paint. So we want to go to the mark seams and get this out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. It's kind of useful to have it open, so I'm just going to shrink it down some. But we don't want it taking up the whole screen. Okay, I know I'll be painting the face separately and the bandana separately. The body I'm just going to leave basically white. I'm not going to paint it at all, but we will be painting the gloves and the belt. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and mark the seams on the bandana. With mark seam selected, if you hold down the shift key, it'll select the whole loop. This saves a little bit of time here. So let's select that one. Try that again. There we go. That loop, which went all the way around to the back. And then we want to separate it out from the face. So we'll select the loop here and here. Right now you can see that it's, if you look over here, you can see that it's kind of an odd shape, and I want to split that open a little bit more. So we'll just make a cut there as well. And now it's all unwrapped to a shape we can work on without any problems. I don't want a seam running down the face, but I don't mind having the seam up in here because this area won't be seen. Around the back of the head, we'll go ahead and split all the way down, which should have unwrapped the face for us. So we're looking good there. I do believe I want the teeth separate. It'll make painting them just a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and select these. And I have a bad way of doing this, guys. I'm sorry, but even though I know this is not going to be a close-up, well, sometimes I just want to go ahead and paint things like this just for the heck of it. Okay, now the teeth are their own little islands each, so those should be pretty easy to paint. I think I'll also go ahead and make the inside of the mouth its own island. So if I just hold down shift and click here again, there we go. Now we have an island for inside the mouth minus the teeth. Moving on to the belt, we have these two edge loops that go around where the belt is. When I did the topology, I made sure they lined up pretty close to on top of the belt. So just hold down shift and click those loops. And just like I did with the scarf, I want to split it down the middle. So we have one long island. Next, for the gloves and hands, we have a loop around the glove. I want the seam to run down right through here. So holding down the shift key, we'll select that. And we'll split the fingertips so they're with the top part. You'll see what I'm talking about in just a second. Now that was a mistake. I'd hold down shift and it selected this whole line down. I don't want that, so I'll hit Control Z to undo it. There we go. We have the hand in two separate islands now. This little window just gets in the way all the time. Every time you undo something, it pops this back open, and I don't know why, but it's really annoying. The main reason I'm doing the arms separate is that if I don't, it's going to be a really long one big piece here. And since I'm not painting this other than just going to make it white, it's kind of it'll save us some space by having these separate. You'll notice in a lot of games the player will wear vests and things to separate it out. Also makes it a little easier for animation sometimes, but we're not doing that. Okay, so we have one arm. There's the island for the arm. And I'll go ahead and split down this way. And do the same on the other side. And I went a little bit too far because I hadn't marked that loop yet, so let me undo that. Mark this loop first. And then split it. And pretty much here we'll do the same thing as we did on the other hand. Okay, and so there's the other hand's islands. And we have everything. No, we don't. I'm jumping the gun here. I want to make it split down the back here. No, I guess I don't have to. If I can move this out of the way again. You can see we have one big island for all the front part of the ghost. Now this is something I do want to go ahead and split down. Right now it's kind of a mess. Even though I won't be painting this, like I said, I do want it split open. And we can just unwrap this as one piece. And I think we're good to go. We'll go ahead and unwrap this now. Sometimes this takes just a second, so I may pause the video while it unwraps. And actually, that only did take a minute. So it's come back, and we have all of our islands here, and unwrapped and ready to go. Like I mentioned, I'm not going to be painting the body separately. I'm just going to color it in white because I think that'll work for me. So what I want to do temporarily anyway is move all the pieces from the body off just to get them out of the way. Holding down shift lets me select multiples like that, and the outer ring of this gizmo moves like so. We'll just get it out of the way. And what I do want to do is, and here's our rotate, I want to move the face up because I do want a lot of room for the face. I'm going to be painting that. I'll be painting the hands, the bandana. Bandana is pretty important, so I want to, and I'm just hitting this rotate clockwise, counterclockwise button just to position it kind of like I want it. So I'm going to want maximum paint area for these objects that you see here. This, not so much. I'm going to shrink those down and fit them where I can. So I'm just going to take just a minute and arrange things a little bit better. I am not the best at this. I'm sure that some of you guys can do a much better job. But here we go anyway. I'm going to scale these up so I have a little bit more room for the actual paint. This point being, you don't want to waste your this area. This is the area you're going to have to paint on. You don't want to waste a bunch of space on parts that you're not really going to paint, or that they're not going to be detailed at all. And like I said, I'm just going to put white on these pieces here, kind of a light gray, so they don't really need any of my space here. We won't see any seams other than, you know, the seams that you'd normally see. But the things we want to detail, like this area here and this, I'm going to be putting a material on it. I want it to have as large an area as I can get to hold that material, and so it shows up clearly. Now the gloves aren't quite as big a deal. They're pretty small objects, kind of hard to see. We just want to rotate this until it fits. Now I don't want it to go outside this border here. We want to keep things inside the border. Alright, so I'm leaving, believe it or not, the rest of this room is for the ghost, for his body. So I'm going to take and shrink all these pieces down. And we'll move them back on to our map area. Let me undo that. I think that was a bad idea. If I'm going to scale up the top of the gloves, I'm going to also scale up the bottom of the gloves. And I'm not going to scale them very much. I'm kind of getting a little bit shorter on space now than I was. If I can get them all together when I go to paint this leather texture on them, since it is just kind of a non-repeating pattern, that may even make it easier for me when I go to paint the gloves. Alright, well, I think that's looking as good as I'm going to get it. So I think we're ready to go ahead and go to Retopo, and we want to merge for per pixel painting with the normal map. Now once again, this takes a second or two sometimes, so I'll probably pause the video. If yours takes time and mine's immediate, you'll be wondering, hey, what's with this? So I just kind of like to explain that. Sometimes these things do take time, so I pause the video and it seems like it's coming back immediately, but it really isn't. I usually leave these settings alone. And I don't want to subdivide this. I'm going to keep my UVs because I just took time to make them. And I'll make a 2K map for this. even though I'll probably actually end up shrinking it down in Photoshop and doing a little touch up in Photoshop. Leave these alone and click OK. Okay, I'm back. That actually probably took 2 or 3 minutes, probably 2 minutes. So let's go ahead into the paint room. And here's our ghost with the normal map applied, and he's looking pretty good. If we look over here in the layers, you can see it's made a separate layer for the occlusion, which is kind of like a global illumination. And the ghost is basically just the ghost's color. And that's what I'm going to fill first of all. I want it to be whiter. So I'll go ahead and choose kind of a greeny gray, about like that. And use the paint bucket, and I'll click layer because I do want to fill the layer. You want to make sure you're on the right one before you do this. Alright, so there's our base color for the ghost. And you can see even though we shrunk those maps down for the body, it looks just fine. So let's move on and do the scarf first, I believe. So up here under textures, I'm going to open the texture UV editor. This can make things real easy sometimes. I want to create a layer for the bandana. Call it bandana color, and I want it to be kind of a red, which is pretty much the red I see right here. So if you hit the X key, it'll swap those colors around. And once again, I'm going to go ahead and use the paint bucket. And I want to uncheck use color tolerance. Let me show you what happens if I have that checked and I click the bandana. It doesn't get it all. So let me undo that. Now something else I noticed when I filled it didn't fill in really with that red. It was kind of weak, and that's because this transparency I have it set to 67. So let me turn that up to 200, uncheck use color tolerance, and click it again. And that's a lot more like what I wanted. So there's the base color for the bandana. In Illustrator, I drew up this little goofy ghost character. That's going to be the pattern that goes on his bandana. So I'll go ahead and click that now. You load those in. Any patterns that you make, you just click this folder and find the pattern. It's way big right now, so you use the magnifying glass to shrink it down to fit. And right now it's going in the wrong direction as well. It looks correct here, but I'm going to be painting it on in this window. So I'll go ahead and rotate it around. Just want to size it down to something that looks good to me and get it in position. And that looks pretty good there. If I don't move it again, let's see, here we go. I'm going to use kind of I have to decide on the color I want for it. Probably kind of a off-white, something about like that. I have a bone color. And I'm just going to use the fill tool again. And we'll click in here. And it's filled in all those ghosts for us. If you're a perfectionist, you probably want to rotate this pattern around and use the paintbrush to paint in the skulls at different angles so it looks a little bit more realistic. I think for what I'm doing, this will work just fine. So to turn this mask off, you just click the X. Well, now I'm going to go ahead and add a bump layer for the bandana. And I'll call it bandana normal. Switch back to the brush and turn off color and turn on the depth. I'm gonna go ahead and color in these gloves now. I found it a really nice place to get some textures, and they're free, and they're also you can use them in commercial products too. He says so right here. The address is up here, webtreats.myway, .mysite.myway.com, and there's a lot of different textures up in here. So I recommend you check the site out. It's really nice, and these are tileable, so you don't have that seam. And I downloaded this particular pack here, and I'm going to use one of these light color leathers on the gloves and the belt. So let me make a new layer, and I'll call this gloves belt. And over in my materials, I've already loaded one up. We have this light brown leather. And I don't want this to be dark. This is a kid's game, so we want it to be kind of a light leather. You know, try and keep the colors kind of cheery anyway. So maybe an orange, and I also make sure the transparency is turned somewhat down. Let's have a quick look here, and let me see what we're doing here. That's way too big. Something more like that. Ah, I did my famous mistake here. This is something to always keep an eye out for. I still have my depth turned on, but my color's off. So let me switch those back around and undo a few times here. Let's try it again. Transparency. And I'm just going to do a few strokes over this, and we'll see what we have. And that's looking pretty good. I like that. I'm going to go with it. Now it is easier if we do this back here in the texture UV editor. And we have all these things up here together, so it's just kind of a matter of making this brush bigger. And painting. Now for some reason my pattern is shifting around a little bit. I'm not sure why it's doing that. The thing I do want to be careful of is where this is so close together. I want to try to avoid getting this pattern. I don't want this to be all consistent. We definitely want to have some areas that are darker than others to make them look a little bit more worn. And you see here I can come right up over the belt since they're so close together. Now since this is on its own layer, if I did accidentally spill over, if I erase it, it won't erase the ghost pattern, or excuse me, that skeleton pattern for the bandana. I'll go ahead and show that real quick. Oh, I made a mistake, see there? So go back to the erase, and I can erase that without it affecting that skeleton that's underneath. In the interest of time, I'm just going to kind of rush this a little bit. We can always go back and work on some things in Photoshop, or come back and take your time and do a really good job. I'm not going to worry about the belt buckle just right now. I'll erase that out later. Could use a fill tool on this, but like I said, I want it to be uneven. But where I do want it to be even is where this joins this edge to this edge. We want that to be pretty much the same consistency, excuse me, the same value and pattern. because otherwise you will see a seam there. So I'm just going to kind of darken that over there and try and darken it as the same amount on the other edge. I'll go ahead in and now just erase on top of the belt buckle. Now I'm not trying for real precision here, but I do want to turn soft stroke on. That'll make my stroke just a little bit more even. Something else you can do is change brushes. This one here is consistent width across, and I'll choose this. I think that's going to work for me anyway. I'm going to move on to the face now. And excuse me, it probably would have been easier for me if I had turned this around the other way, but fortunately in this instance we're going to just probably do most of the painting right here on the model and not over here. But I do think I can go ahead and fill in the mouth real quick, and I will use the fill for that. So I want kind of a dark reddish brown. And go to the fill tool and go ahead and create a new layer for the mouth. Right, and just like that we have the inside of the mouth filled in. Since this is more of a learning exercise than anything, like I said, we're not going to see the inside of the mouth, but I think I will go ahead and turn on the specularity and turn it down just a little bit. I'm going to turn off the color, and on the tongue I think I'll paint some specularity. We can have a little bit of a glisten there on the tongue. Here are the teeth, and I want them to be in a kind of an ugly brown. I'll go ahead and use the paint bucket again. Ah, my bad. I have specularity turned on. It's something you have to keep an eye on. And obviously I don't. So there we go. And since I had the specularity on when I hit the fill earlier, it did put a specularity on the teeth, and that's just fine. I think that's probably a good thing. So touching them up just a little bit more, I'm going to use the darken brush. Make sure your transparency is down, cause just like in the other one, if you use darken and it's way up there, it's going to show. It's going to just turn them black almost immediately. And let me reduce my brush size and go ahead and just give them some cavities. Turn that up just a little bit and reduce the size of the brush. Part of the reason I can actually get in here on something this small is that we did give it plenty of room on this UV map. If I hadn't given it enough room, I wouldn't be able to do all these details that will never be seen anyway. And that looks pretty bad, so I'm going to leave it. So let's move on to his face. A new layer. Call this one just a face color. For the face, I'm not going to do a whole lot really. I'm going to darken in the eyes, and we're going to be placing eyeballs on this guy. And I think I can get this out of the way for now. We'll place eyeballs, and they'll be covering up a lot of this eye socket. So I just want to paint a nice dark brown in the eye socket. And this time I'll make sure that I have my color on, and I do. Select the right brush. And just color in these eye sockets. These will really make his eyeballs pop out. Okay, holding down Shift, excuse me, I'll go ahead and smooth this down a little bit so it blends in with the outside. I want to go ahead and paint inside the nostril with the same brown. You can see that since we did make the face so large on the map that we can get some pretty good detail here. Okay, I'm going to switch to a kind of a lighter green. There we go. Go ahead and put these bags under his eyes too. And I think I'm going to put a little green around his lips as well. Yeah, he's looking pretty ghostly to me. I'm going to smooth this out just a hair down here. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm not going to do too much more to that. I will go ahead and make a another layer for his a little bit of extra lines here. And I want to turn on the depth and turn off the color. Let's see what kind of depth we get with this. Okay, that's just a little bit too much. This is detail that'll probably never be seen, but it's good practice, so what the heck, let's just do it. We'll put in a few strokes here for his lips, and I'm not going to do too much here. And you could put all the detail you want in this guy. Say maybe take this brush, this speckle brush, and using this pen, you could drag in some dots, kind of make him look like he has a lot of skin pores, or hold down the control key and do it, and it'll put some indents there. I'm just clicking and dragging over and over again to kind of give this random pattern. We'll give him some pores on his nose as well. I used to airbrush in real life. Actually, I painted for a motorcycle company called Big Dog Motorcycles in Wichita, Kansas. And when I would do something like this and have to put pores on the skin, it was generally a matter of taking an X-Acto knife and going tick, 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 and scraping little bits of paint. It's either that or you spray a real low pressure and it stipples out like this. But this is so much easier, and then if we don't like it, we can just get rid of it without having to repaint. Alright, never be seen, but there it is, and I like it. I'm going to leave it. We could do the same thing with his beard and go on from there, but we'll save that for another project. And guys, I think that is looking about like I wanted it to look. I think when I put the hat on him, he's going to be pretty good to go. So let's call this one done. I'm going to go ahead and export the file out. I'll use the export model because I'm going to take it into Lightwave. I want to export the low poly mesh, though you can choose mid poly mesh. I found that I've already exported this once, and the low poly mesh looks really just fine. I will export the specularity because we put a little bit in his mouth. If you don't use any of these, you don't have to export them out. I do want the color, specularity, and the normal map. And I'll save them as target files. I'll probably work on these just a little bit in Photoshop, not much. So I'm pretty happy with this, and we'll just click OK. And that should do it. It should have given me 3 different color maps, a normal color and a spec, plus the object saved out. So I'll see you in the next one, which should be when we take this into Lightwave and animate him so we can get him into Unity and have him be a gunslinger.